Skywatch.Ai insurance is on demand, and anytime you need it, check out the link below.
I'm Justin Davis, and this is Joe Camp's RC.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to check out the version 2 of the ET115. This is the 3S version. Super excited about this because it's going to rip, you guys. 3S on a micro brushless is just totally crazy. You did see the ET100 on the channel earlier this week. That was the 2S version of this bad boy, but now we have the 3S version in hand, and the biggest difference between the two is the motors that are on the 3S version can handle 3S. Don't try to run 3S on the other version, even though it has the same ESCs. The motors are different on this one, and they're different because you can run that 3S battery. You have a little bit of a higher KV here, and it's going to be able to handle a little bit higher motor battery. So here we go. Those are 3500s, 5500, actually 1104, 5500. So I'm expecting super badass performance out of this one, and even though we have prop guards on there, we're just going to bounce off of things, and hopefully this one doesn't have as much lumber in that bottom end. We had some sort of issues where I went around in a power loop, came down, and well, you know, a little bit of direction change there because there's a lot of prop wash going on here with these extra bits of plastic. Now if you want to be hardcore, you can just snip these off and you will pretty much get rid of that lumbering issue. And a lot of these whoops that have huge prop guards on them like this do have that little bit of a lumber issue, and that's because you're getting so much extra noise in the frame itself surrounding the flight controller that it's overreacting to some of that extra noise and trying to correct it. So please do make a comment on this video and any of the videos in October, because we're giving away a Baby Hawk R Pro on the channel from EMAX, a very awesome quad that you see here on the screen, and we're giving away the iFlight IH3 long range version. That's a sub 250 gram long range quad that records 1080p. So please do make a comment down below, and also if you want to support my videos, please do click on my Patreon and support me for $1 or more. Not a big deal. But let's go outside now, you guys, and let's do some flying here with this little ET115 3S Mega Whoop. I think you guys are going to think this is super awesome because I love this quad. Here we go. Alright guys, welcome back from the flight test. This was so much fun to fly on 3S, and a lot of you guys are going to ask me the question right out of the gate, which one should I get, the ET100 or should I get the ET115 3S version? Well, if you want my opinion, I would get this one all day long, mainly because of one thing. That thing being the fact that when I'm at the bottom end and I really get to the bottom of my punch outs, or I'm coming around in a big maneuver, I have plenty of power on 3S to just kind of throttle out of things. And that's what I'm looking for with something like a 3S Whoop. It really does have that extra bit of power you're looking for, and it doesn't really ever feel bogged down or letting me down with the power. That's the biggest advantage of going 3S on something like the little Mega Whoop here. Now, both of these versions do have 12 amp BL Heli ESCs, but the biggest advantage of having this one is that it does have the upgraded motors. And that's really the only big difference. They still both use that same VTX. And the camera's okay. You probably upgrade this to maybe some kind of run cam micro a little bit later and maybe have a little bit better image. But I thought on a bright sunny day, it actually did look pretty good. But the meat of this quad is right here. This is the 1104 motors, and those are 5500 kVs. Check those out. They do have a bottom plate on them, and they do have that blue bell with LDARC on the other side there. And you can see your props on the very top there. Those are the 2345 props. So a very nice, good size, all around tri-blade prop inside this plastic housing. This feels like exactly like the same kind of plastic that I had with the other one, but I didn't have as many spills with this quad, mainly because I had that extra power, and I never bottomed out on my power, which is great coming out of maneuvers. So I didn't end up breaking a prop guard this time, but they do have what feels like a little bit of a plasticky, kind of maybe a brittle type of plastic on this. It's probably going to be one of the main true cons of this quad. I feel like they could have used maybe Delrin on here, and that would have made it a little bit tougher, like the same kind of plastic you see on the little tiny whoops. That's basically like almost indestructible type of plastic, which this plastic is not. And they also both have the same prop caps on the very top, these red prop caps, and you do get some extra hardware in case you decide to take these off. Make sure you use the shorter screws, because if you put these longer screws back down in there, you could damage or basically fry your motor when you turn your quad on. The prop's going to not help you out much, because it's going to shorten the length here, and the motor screw is going to go longer into the coils of the stator and cause a motor short out. So be extra careful with that if you decide to remove those prop nuts off the top right there. And if we look on the bottom of this quad, it does have the same type of setup as the other one. It has the VTX down here with the antenna running out the back, and normally they had it running out right here, and I actually thought that I didn't get a very good reception with it just poking up about that much out of the top of the quad's frame. So I ended up moving it back down here, and what I did was I separated it as much as I could from the power cord, because the power cord is going to give you a lot of interference. If you see a lot of interference from this VTX, it's not a very well placed VTX where it's at right there. If you could put it somewhere else, or maybe even upgrade it to something different, might be better. But what I did was I brought this cord right around here, and this is the antenna, not a cord, but just with a little bit of a zip tie and some heat shrink, I made it go off the bottom like that. So when I'm flying away, I have good reception, and when I'm coming back also, I still have pretty good reception. So it's not a problem that way. Now, flying characteristics of this one versus the other one, you could see when I flew the first one, the 2S version of this, the ET100 versus this one, if I could give a comparison of both, this one flies a lot better. The 3S version flies a lot better line of sight, obviously, than the 2S one. It just has a little less punch when I do some flips and maneuvers. This does everything faster. So the 2S version is probably a little better for beginners. If you're a beginner that wants something that you can kind of progress into and move into, you could start out with the ET115. It's not going to be a bad one to start out with still, and you can learn to manage that power. But like I always say on the channel, like, power is nothing without control. So learn your orientations with your sticks, and then move up and progress to the more powerful quads later. Starting out with something like this is much better than starting on something like a 3 to 5 inch quad. Now, both of these quads did come with 3 extra canopies, which is cool because you get a total of 4 canopies with it. And this one actually came with the smoke colored one on there. And I like the smoke color one a little bit better than I like the white one. The white one came on the ET100. and the white one actually also was complemented with black prop guards on the ET100 versus the white prop guards. But I kind of prefer the way this one looks a little bit better. Kind of just looks a little bit cooler to me. Now also you get some more stuff down here in the bottom of the box, and this is cool. They do give you a much bigger battery. You get the 3S 600 milliamp battery, and that's rated up to 50C right there. So not too bad. I did see this battery sag out a little bit when I first turned this quad on and I first get going. It seems like a lot of my batteries, maybe they're just older batteries, but it seemed like they bottom out pretty quickly, and it did not seem to report the correct voltage. There might have been some discrepancy there with the voltage while I'm flying. It always seemed to be super low, but I still had like an extra minute worth of flying. So I'm not sure that they have the voltage quite correct on the OSD on this quad. But I think it's cool that they did include a 3S 600 milliamp battery, because this is probably the size that you need to run on this particular quad. And I'll try to put some links down below for this type of battery. A little bit better version of what they have included here with this. So if I do include a link, it'll probably be something like a tattoo battery that's going to hold up with this quad and all your even your roughest flights. Now the ET100, it does use the 1935 props, and the ET115 actually uses the a little bit larger 2345 props, and it's cool because they do give you more than enough props in here. This is awesome. It looks like we have about 4 sets in here and probably 2 extra sets inside here that have the yellow and the white ones in here. And kind of cool that they give you this many props. This is actually more props than the other one came with, the ET100. So I think this one might be a little bit better value, especially if these are close to the same price. You're going to get a little bit extra punch, and you're going to get some extra props, which is cool. So also inside here you get some extra rubber bands, and those are for holding your batteries on the very bottom. It's kind of cool. And this hardware in here is also super important. You can see that right there. That is for putting on the props without those prop nuts on the very top. These little domes right here, if you take those off, make sure you use the shorter hardware right here, because the long ones, like I said before, those will go through and damage the motor, and you'll actually have to buy a new motor and solder on a whole new one yourself. And also, just like the other version, you get a full scale instruction manual with this one. It even has beta flight stuff in here. It's all in English, and it has a little bit of Mandarin in there as well, but it also has flight controller schematics in there, which is super cool. So if you needed to solder up any other type of receiver on board, you can tell how it solders up, where it goes. Also, it has a harness on there, so you don't actually need to solder up a receiver. So if you can look at that really close right there, you can see that that's 5 volt. Oh, that's the LED strip right there. So let's look on the other side right here on the very top. That is where your Spectrum DSMX goes, or your PPM. So you have a few things there. You have 5 volt, and you have a spot for 3 volt as well. You can see that yellow line right there goes over, and that is where your Spectrum wire is going to hook up for your power. So if you're running DSM2 or DSMX receivers, that's how you're going to do that. Frsky guys, you're going to do S-Bus or PPM. Most likely, most of you guys are going to use S-Bus on this flight controller. But also in here, we have some beta flight instructions. It does have 3 UARTs on board. It does not have any smart audio, so don't expect smart audio on this model. But it also gives you information on how to bind up for Taranis receivers right here, which is cool, and more information on the RX2A Pro, which is pretty sweet. They have all the bases covered with this instruction manual. Really, really nice setup here. Now let's go ahead and take a little bit closer look at the quad. This is the star of the show, so let me go ahead and break into this, and I'm going to talk about this while I'm removing these screws. It has 3 screws on the very bottom, and by the way, this is not an F4. This is actually an F3 flight controller. It's the Fly Tower F3 combo with OSD. Super cool. And it did come with Betaflight 3.1 on here. So if you're going to upgrade this to 3.5, you'll need to do that with your Betaflight software. And the target should be Omnibus F3. Let's go ahead and take this off. And the cool thing about these bind and flies is that a lot of times when you go to test the motors, the first time you flip a switch, most of these motors are going to be going the right direction. If you're brand new to this back motor has to go to the right. This one goes to the left. This one goes to the left. This one goes to the right. So right rear is going to be right turn. Just remember that. RRR. Right turn rear. Like that. Directly diagonally across. Right turn. and then these are going to be your opposites, counterclockwise, left turn. Now I'll go ahead and take the top off for you, and the camera is up inside the housing, and it is kind of connected to the housing here, so don't move your canopy too far if you're taking your canopy off. You've got one LED in the back. It's green when you're ready to go, and it's red when it's in failsafe. If you don't have a connection to your receiver, it's going to show that. Now you can see this flight tower just a little bit closer up, and that's your F3 hiding in there. Check that out. That very bottom one right there, that is where your S-bus wires go out. You can see your signal wire there. It's the yellow one, your 5-volt and your ground. And if you're going to do DSM2 or a Spectrum, you're going to need to add a wire right there. So just take this yellow one out right here and move it over one slat, and you've got 3.3 volt for your DSM2 or DSMX receivers. So that's kind of cool. We can also see KingkongRC.com on there, audio and video up top. So you might be able to hook up some different type of maybe smart audio transmitter on here, which would be kind of cool. If you could put some Unify Pro on there, that's also pretty sweet. And we have a cable up here, which is going to be for your camera. It's running down to here, and then I'm not sure where the VTX is plugged in just yet. It's probably soldered in on the bottom. And we've got our USB port right here, and just looking for a boot button. They do have a boot button right there, the little gold button right there. That's how you're going to flash on your new firmware. So you're going to hold this down while you plug in your USB cable. Kind of tricky, I know, but you're going to remove this canopy off the top, and then you'll be able to flash the new target on here for Betaflight 3.5, which is kind of sweet. And just underneath this bad boy is where the 4-in-1 12 amp BL Heli ESCs are. And those are also running D-Shot 600. And some of you guys are asking questions about this sort of strange alien looking PDB down here. And actually this is just to separate all of this from the frame. It's basically just a riser in here. It's not any type of anything you're going to solder anything to. So don't attempt to solder anything to this. This is primarily just for looks on this quad. So be very careful there. Now if you look on the bottom, this is where the battery strap is, and this is actually just a rubber band, but right there where your VTX is, I was talking about this VTX before. This is a 16 channel, and I thought it was a 200 milliwatt, but it's actually 100, and 100 seems to penetrate pretty decent on here, because I did go behind trees, and you guys could see there when I run around really big thick trees. During the fall, there's still a lot of trees and thick bush in between myself and this VTX, and it actually held up pretty well. I was surprised at the penetration that this VTX had through the thick leaves and the bushes. So not a bad VTX, pumped all the way up to 100 milliwatt, but I believe it does come even defaulted into 25 milliwatt on that VTX. All right, so I got my scale on, and let's just go ahead and put the quad on there with the 3S LiPo that comes along with it. That's a 3S 600 milliamp. I have everything tucked up there, so it's not going to have any issues with touching the bench. And I'm right at 150 grams right there. That's pretty cool. That's with the battery. Your total takeoff weight is 150 grams. And then without a battery, the dry weight without the battery is going to be 97.8 grams, so under 100 grams. That's not bad at all. So let's just go ahead and break it down for you guys. Let me give you a star rating. I'm going to go ahead and rate this one at a 4.8 out of 5. Maybe a couple points off for a little bit of lumber here and there. Not totally perfect. It did fly way better than the ET100 V2, mainly because I like the quad on 3S, and I think the 1104 motors are a good match with this weight class, right around the 90 gram mark, around close to 100 grams. I like to have a 3S battery on there, and it's nice they did include a battery. A lot of these bind and flies these days, you just get a box in the mail, a little tiny box with the quad in it, and that's it. That's all you get for around $130. But this one, I feel like it's a better value, mainly because it comes with an extra large case. You can still get the quad in there even after you put on your receiver antenna and have things sort of sticking out here. You can just bend that down a little bit and still get it in the box. So I think that's super cool. You could probably almost get 2 of these in there, or maybe a small little Inductrix or tiny whoop in there with your mega whoop. But it's also cool they give you about at least 6 sets of props inside the box. and they give you 3 extra canopies. So a total of 4 canopies, tons of extra props, huge box with latches, a little carrying handle, and a battery, and even with your choice of receiver. So I think that's definitely worth the 4.8 stars. And fun factor was a 5 out of 5 on this one. So definitely worth the money. And if you have to save up money to buy this one, I would save up money and buy this one, because this is a solid quad. It flies excellent, and I've had years and years of micro brushless experience, and I'm not sure I've had one come in the shop that was this far ahead that is running prop guards. So if you're brand new to the hobby, or you really just want to get out there and rip with a fun micro brushless that you can bounce off things with, this one is excellent. It's awesome. It is pure King Kong perfection. I love it. So thanks again for watching my channel. Don't forget about the giveaway, guys. Make your comments down below, and subscribe and share as always. I appreciate you watching my honest reviews, guys. I'm Justin Davis. Peace out, guys. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.